The American President Donald Trump today, on July 14th, made an urgent address to Ukraine, Europe, and the Russian Federation regarding Russia's war against Ukraine. And in this episode, I suggest calmly analyzing the main points that were voiced by Donald Trump and Mark Rutte. Let's break them down into sections. Because they talked about large-scale arms supplies to Ukraine, talked about sanctions against Russia, talked about tariffs against Russia and its partners, and talked about Europe's readiness to support Ukraine until the end. And of course, there were a lot of words from Donald Trump about his personal disappointment with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and about how angry he is at him. Because Putin basically betrayed him several times. Trump claims that there were at least 3 or 4 times when Putin told him, "That's it, tomorrow we're already signing the peace agreement." That same evening, rockets and drones were launched at peaceful Ukrainian cities. And Trump also commented on the suspension of arms supplies to Ukraine 2 weeks ago. Let's discuss all this in a structured way and draw some conclusions from today's briefing. My name is Alexei Pecci. Today is July 14th. Let's go through everything step by step. But before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, leave any comment you want, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link is in this video's description. Let's review the briefing by Mark Rutte and Donald Trump that lasted nearly 30 minutes. And let's start with the section about weapons for Ukraine. As Donald Trump states, today we made a deal with NATO. When we send them weapons, they will pay for them. NATO will be able to buy military aid from the United States worth billions and billions of dollars. All of this will be quickly delivered to the battlefield. So the main point here, which we've already discussed more than once, is that Donald Trump has decided, first of all, to make money on supplying weapons to Ukraine, and secondly, to maintain his political status. The kind of president who will keep saying, "This is not my war." The United States is not directly involved in this war, only serving as an intermediary. That's why we don't supply weapons directly to Ukraine. We just sell them to the Europeans, and then the Europeans decide on their own whether to transfer those weapons to Ukraine. As for the Patriots, there's an interesting case here that needs to be discussed. As you know, Ukraine has been hinting for a long time that they need at least 10 Patriot systems to cover the Ukrainian sky. Trump says that the Patriots will be fully equipped and some will arrive within a few days. Trump says the first systems could be in Ukraine within days. The deliveries will be coordinated by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and the United States Permanent Representative to NATO Matthew Whitaker. And then Trump says that there is a country, or rather countries, that can provide 17 Patriots. Perhaps not all of them, but most of them will go to the battlefield, Trump says. And this number, 17 Patriots, has stirred up many people today, and many were confused about what is actually happening. Is Trump really ready to provide 17 Patriot systems to Ukraine? Unfortunately, things aren't that rosy, and I think it's necessary to explain what's going on. When Trump says 17 Patriots, he most likely means launchers, not 17 full systems. The thing is, one system consists of 4 to 8 launchers. If we do the math, this corresponds to about 2 or 3 Patriot systems, which had already been discussed for delivery to Ukraine earlier. What I mean is that Germany has already clearly stated that it is ready to buy 2 Patriot systems for Ukraine, and Norway says, "We'll buy 1 as well," then everything adds up. 2 or 3 systems are exactly those 17 launchers that Donald Trump is talking about. Then Trump says, "We want to make sure that Ukraine does what it should, but maybe Ukraine will feel so encouraged that it will stop wanting a deal." That is, Trump is afraid that very large arms supplies, and even more so when the armed forces of Ukraine start forcefully pushing Putin's soldiers out of Ukrainian territory, Ukraine might suddenly not want any peace deal at all. And here Mark Rutte interrupts Donald Trump and says that Ukraine wants a deal and it will be committed to this deal. There is no doubt about it. Trump says that Ukraine must continue to want this deal. Rutte, I agree, Trump, but what if it turns out that they won't want this deal anymore later, Rutte? No, we will ensure it. That's Trump. We will ensure it. I'm sure that the Ukrainians, will do what they have to. We know what needs to be done and it will be very strong. It's an interesting point because Trump seems afraid, though I don't know what makes him think that way. He's really afraid that if the armed forces of Ukraine are heavily armed to the point where they just start crushing the Russian occupiers, then Kyiv simply won't want any peace deal anymore. They'll say, listen, we'll drive the Russians out of our territory first and then we'll talk. Trump is really afraid of that. And here, Mark Rutte even tried, you see, to save the situation. As for the sanctions, what does Trump tell us? If Russia does not agree to the deal, then after 50 days, the United States will impose secondary tariffs of 100% on its trading partners. There's no point in imposing 500%. If we impose 100%, the effect will be the same. I want to remind you, especially my longtime subscribers, that I've been around for a while. Back in the spring, I explained that when Trump imposed a 145% tariff against China, I said it was complete nonsense. Any tariff above 100%, whether it's 101%, 700%, or 105%, it will all be the same. Because in fact, when you pay 100% of the value of the goods as a tariff, that's an embargo. No one will want to do that. This actually means that it's a complete ban on importing these goods into your territory. So this means a 100% embargo. And now Trump admits it. He says, yes, there's no point in imposing 500%. We'll just impose 100%. That's basically an embargo. That will be enough. But what's interesting here is that Trump is actually giving Putin time until September 1st so that he can make a peace agreement during the summer before September 1st. Otherwise, these tariffs will be imposed. These tariffs will be against Russia, China, Brazil, India, Turkey, and all other countries that continue to buy oil, gas, petroleum products, uranium, and other goods from Russia. That means secondary tariffs will be much stronger and more effective than those imposed directly against Russia. As for Europe's willingness to support Ukraine until the very end, there's an interesting statement from Trump here. Did he overestimate his own attitude toward Europe? Quote, Europe has a very high fighting spirit when it comes to continuing support for Ukraine. When I first got involved in this, I didn't think their fighting spirit would be like that, but it is. I told them last month their spirit is remarkable. They really believe this is a very, very important thing. Now they're paying for all of this. Can you imagine? We're not paying anymore. I spoke with Germany and other countries, and they're willing to go very far. They don't want this to continue. Now, that's why I think it would be very bad for Putin's economy. He needs to save his economy and save his country. And, you know, he has a wonderful country for trade if he spent those assets on something else instead of war. That's a great point, because Donald Trump is basically saying, listen, I was wrong about Europe. I thought Europe would just take everything from us. And when the question comes up, what are you paying? They don't refuse RAM, he says. It turns out that for them, supporting Ukraine is really so important that they're ready to pay for all of this, even if we don't pay anything anymore. There was also another quote from Trump where he says, well, yes, at first I actually misjudged them. Of course, they were talking about Putin. Trump says, I'm disappointed in President Putin because I wanted a deal 2 months ago. Mark Rutte says, Putin has never sent serious people to Istanbul for negotiations. I remember how you, that is President Trump, Rubio Vitkov, were ready for these negotiations. We put pressure on the Ukrainians to send a high-level team to Istanbul, and they did. And then the Russians sent some history teacher who was telling us the history of Russia since the year 1215. There's some mockery here, of course, but also a statement that this is about the negotiations in Turkey on May 15, which Putin said would be negotiations on May 15. Then A got scared, and sat in the bunker, messed himself, didn't go anywhere. And this is exactly about those negotiations, and Mark Rutte is furious. They sent some history teacher, that's Medinsky, who sat there trying to sell us something. What was that all about? You were serious about it. The Americans and Europeans were serious about it. The Ukrainians sent a high-level delegation, but Russia didn't send one. Just some clown who sat there telling the history of Russia, which nobody cared about at all. Then he says, we talked a lot with Putin. I hang up the phone and I'm like, oh, that was a good conversation. And then missiles fly to Kyiv and other cities. I'm like, that's strange. And when this happens for the third or fourth time, you realize that these conversations actually mean nothing. As they say, it finally dawned on Trump. Then Trump continues, I come home and say to the First Lady, Melania Trump, you know, I spoke with Vladimir Putin today. We had a wonderful conversation. She says, oh, really? Well, they just hit another city. So I don't want to say he's a killer, but he's a tough guy. That's been proven over time. Well, you know, here are Melania and Trump, my special respect. Can you imagine? Trump comes to Melania and Trump and says, oh, I had a great conversation with Putin today. She immediately put him in his place and says, listen, go check the news. You had a wonderful conversation with him, but that idiot is hitting peaceful cities in Ukraine with missiles and drones. That's your wonderful conversation. And then Trump continues, he fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, but he didn't fool me. At some point, conversation isn't enough and action is required. About 4 times he told me, yes, maybe our deal looks pretty good, and then the bombs would start flying. Donald Trump recently remarked on the halt of weapons supplies to Ukraine, stating, today is a very big day. Pete Hegseth and I knew it would come, so we decided to review our supplies. We couldn't do what we're doing today without knowing how much we have left in our warehouses. So we took a little break, and today we have a very big event. So Trump claims that this pause was really necessary in order to announce today what they announced. That's the kind of briefing it was. I don't know if there was more positive or negative in it. Write your opinion in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. And if you want to support the work of this channel, you can do so with any donation. By using the links and details in the description of this video, or by scanning the QR code on your screens. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.